So, hi everyone, it is Saturday night, 11 o'clock, and here I am lecturing. Welcome! Today we're going to talk about happiness and flow. And as usual, before I start talking about the research and about the articles that are on your list for today, let me explain the definitions of what we're talking about. But first, give you the broader perspective of this week and also of last week. So happiness, and I will come to a definition a little bit later, but happiness is a state which is generic and it's not temporarily. So it's a stable, generic state of positive effect. So you're feeling positive not about something, but about life in general. And you don't feel happy at a specific moment, but you feel very happy in general for a longer period of time. That's what we call happiness. Flow is a temporary state. It's the moment that you feel a moment of joy, of absorption on a specific moment in time. As you can see here in this graph, so these are generic states, and the green ones are states which are related to work. And engagement was a positive state regarding work in general, and it's not only positive, it's also the willingness to go the extra mile. Satisfaction was a definition of feeling good about your work, but not necessarily going the extra mile. And we also talked last week about salary satisfaction. Okay, so for today we talk about happiness and we talk about flow. Let me come to the definitions. Please have a look at these definitions here. Life evaluation refers to a person's thought about his or her life. Yeah, so it's a mental thing. I think about my life. You know, if you and you can measure it for instance by saying, you know, if your life was a stairs and 0 is unhappy and 10 is happy, think about your lives. Where do you think that you are? You know, what represents your life? Okay, emotional well-being is how you feel. Did you laugh today? Did you feel anger today? What do you feel at this moment when I'm talking to you? How do you feel at this moment? It's a feeling, and we feel all the time. Okay, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, and he was asking himself, why are people happy? So he was following people throughout the day and testing which were the moments that they were feeling most joy. And to give away already one of the conclusions of today's lecture, it turns out that the moment that you are doing something, it turns out that people are actually happier when they're doing something than when they're doing nothing. Yeah, so what we call relaxation, you know, being at our phone all the time, or watching TV, or watching YouTube, or whatever, those are not moments that we have the biggest joy in our lives. Most likely we are doing something active. And he also found out that people reported higher levels of happiness the moment that they were with other people. I'll get back to you on this one later on. Okay, having said that, so what he basically was doing for is that how people describe themselves is often by their ecstasies. And now you think, like, hey, is he making an advertisement for drugs? No, but the Latin word ecstasy means standing outside yourself. Yes, so if you look at this video, this is how we portray happiness in social media, or in movies, or if you're watching a YouTube movie with of an artist, of music, it's often this kind of an environment. Those are moments of ecstasy. Yeah, watch YouTube and watch your favorite musician, and look at the video clip, or whatever you want to call it, that comes with it, and it's most likely describing ecstasy. You know, on a dance floor, being attractive, having a cool life, being with friends and family. No, not with family most of the time. It's moments of standing outside of your normal job. You don't see your favorite artist, whoever your favorite artist might be. You don't see a movie of somebody sitting at home watching TV. Yeah, so it's ecstasy. Now, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi basically said, and these are my words, so don't look this up on the internet because you will not find this word, but basically he was looking for ecstasy, the opposite of ecstasy. How can you find happiness in daily life? You know, you're doing something in your daily life, and you can find joy in it, in your relationship, in your work, in your in music, in sports, whatever. Okay, what are the what's so if you have two axes to understand when people find flow, he basically said you find flow the moment that you that there are a lot of things asked from you. Yeah, so the challenge level is high and your skill level is also high. Now if you have a look at this graph, you see the axis of flow. So it's the moment that your skills and your challenges are in balance. So the moment that you're doing something really difficult in terms of music, in terms of sports, or in your studies, for instance, you're watching this movie, you're reading an article, it's very difficult. You go like, I don't understand this. Do I really want this? And then with very hard work, you succeed. Those are moments of flow. Yeah, so you're absorbed by it, you think about it, and you got the feeling that you master something really difficult. That is flow. The moment that you are, that the skills level that you have are very high, but not much is asked from you, it's pretty relaxed. And many people will say, how are you doing? It's pretty relaxed. And the moment that a lot is asked from you, but your skill level is low, of course, that's anxiety, because it feels very uncomfortable the moment that a lot of it is asked from you, but you're not able to do it. And you probably have that experience that you're walking in a country where you don't speak the language, people talk to you, and you just don't know what to say. That's really annoying. The moment that you learn a new language, somebody talks to you in the street, and you are able to respond, that's cool. That can be flow. Now, the moment that there's not a lot of skills asked from you, and there's also, so you don't have a lot of skills, and also nothing is asked from you, it's apathy. And basically, we lead a lot of our lives in apathy. Yeah, so we're at our phone, watching a TV, you know, doing nothing. What we call, well, I'm cool at the moment, basically means that you're in apathy. And those are moments most of the time that we do not report high levels of flow. And hence, those are not the happiest moments in our lives. Let me explain the elements of flow. First of all, it's about an activity. It's about doing things, and I can tell you, it's one of the major takeaways of today. It's also one of the major takeaways of tomorrow when we talk about coaching. It's about doing stuff. When we lead our lives, we have to do stuff. Apathy is our enemy. Yeah. So if we do nothing, nothing happens. But if we want to create flow, those are moments that we know what to do. Yeah, so we have a task and we know what to do. We know also how to do it. While we are doing those activities, we know how well we are doing. So basically the word here is we get feedback. Now I have to admit that this is one of the problems if you are a student, because you are studying but you don't know how good you are doing, which is not rewarding. It is rewarding that you're doing something, you get something in return. Computer games, by the way, they're made for addiction, and there you definitely do know how good you're doing, and if you're not doing good, you immediately get feedback how you are doing. You know where to go. Yeah, so you have a goal. Yeah, so you set a target and you're going towards something. There's a high perceived challenge and there are high perceived skills. So if we look at the axis that I just told you, high challenge, high skills. Okay, and there's freedom from distraction. So you're focused. Yeah, those are the moments that you're completely focused. Good. So in other words, the takeaway here is, and maybe let it be a takeaway for the rest of your lives, the moment that you want to have flow in something. So if you want to do music, first of all, there's more flow, more likely to make music yourself, if you have some skills at least, to make music than to listen to music. Yeah, there's more flow in doing sports than watching sports, and there's more flow in doing things in general in your life than watching other people doing it. So watching a romantic movie is not as romantic as having a romantic moment. Yeah, let me put it that way. So flow, you can find flow in almost everything, and this was the beginning of the research regarding happiness, and one of the takeaways is that find activities that have the elements of flow. And that brings me to the article of Demaruti and colleagues. And the article is called Work-Related Flow and Energy at Work and at Home, and the study of the role of daily recovery. Okay, so what they've looked at is flow in the workplace, and they've looked what the impact was of recovery. And let me explain that. But before I do so, let me give you the definition as it is given in this article of flow. We've talked about flow already, but let me give you the definition as it is defined in this article. And they are citing Csikszentmihalyi from an article from 1975, when they say flow is the holistic sensation that people feel when they act with total involvement. Yeah, so this is the definition of flow. Now, let me show you the conceptual model that has been used in this article. Now, what you see here is flow at work. So the way that people perceive their flow during their workday, and flow has impact on the vigor that people feel during work. So and it also has and or fatigue. You can imagine that having flow has an impact on whether or not you feel either very tired or very energetic at the workplace. But if people have flow at work, it also will impact the amount of fatigue or vigor that they will feel when they are at home. Now, the idea is that there is a moderating effect, and the moderating effect is of recovery and a recovery experience at work. And an example of recovery at work is, of course, taking a break. For instance, you're having a coffee break, you take a couple of minutes and do something which gives you energy. The article also explains that not every break that you take is necessarily giving you energy. For instance, and it's not in the article because it's from 2012, and in those days the smartphone was not as much used as it is today. But you can imagine that if you have a break and you're constantly on your phone, it's not necessarily giving you energy. Again, not in the article, but just something that you can deduct from the article. And the same is when you are at home, can you really detach from your work? So psychological detachment is, can you mentally switch off from work? And in many languages they say taking your work back to home, and the same applies for what you see here. Can you detach with your mind from work? And the idea is that if you have a certain amount of flow at the workplace, and you are able to detach from home, then they assume that you will have less fatigue and more vigor while at home. Likewise, if you have a certain amount of flow during your work and you are able to recover during the workday, then indeed you will feel less fatigue and more vigor at work. Okay, so what came out of the study? Let me give you, while we still look at this figure number one, let's see what came out of the study. And the most important finding is that the absorption and intrinsic motivation are positively related to vigor at work and at home. So when people feel absorbed, as in flow, and when they feel intrinsically motivated, they indeed feel more vigor at work and at home. So that's what they found. So the first lines that you see here, the straight lines from left to right, is indeed what they found. More flow at work leads to more vigor at home and more vigor at work. Okay. Whereas enjoyment was positively related to vigor and low exhaustion, both at work and at the end of the day. So it's also good to have a good look in the article. It's not in this model, but they also looked at enjoyment, and there is more in the article. It's more specifically explained, but you also find the effect of enjoyment. Now, they found that flow at work is positively related to vigor and negatively related to exhaustion after work, particularly when employees do not recover sufficiently during work breaks. Let me translate these results to normal life. Is that it's very important to during a workday to take moments off. And well, this is a course in psychology, and we're all human beings, so everything that I say also applies to you, my audience, my students. And think of the following: that moments of resting during study are very important. And I know that you finished a course in neuropsychology, and there you found the same, is that if your brain is like a muscle, and like in any muscle, you should give it some rest every now and then. So look for activities that actually recharge the brain. And I'm echoing everything that you've learned in neuropsychology. Exercise and physical exercise or making music, but especially physical exercise, is a very good moment to take a break. So what most people do is that they work very hard during the working day and work for, let's say, 8 or 9 consecutive hours. They take off, go to the gym, and then go wild in the gym. And I'm not saying something wrong with that, but it's much better to, instead of going an hour or an hour and a half to your gym, is that you take those 1.5 hours during the day. Yes, so that you work for half an hour, then walk the stairs for 10 minutes, work for another half an hour, go and cycle a little bit. That throughout the day your brain is being energized with fresh oxygen. Instead of, again, working really hard and then play hard, work hard, play hard. In other words, work hard and then go to the gym. So this is to translate that what neuropsychology told you in the previous class actually applies to the working place as well. Is so instead of you working all day, go outside and exercise. And that's basically one of the things that we definitely can recommend you from neuropsychology. That brings me to happiness in general. So happiness, as I told you, has different aspects. So there's the evaluation of life, and there's well-being. And it turns out, and in social psychology, we always start with this basic psychological construct, which is that a lot of our behavior is a construct of our personality and our environment. If you want to analyze a problem in social psychology, you should always start with the question, what is the person part, what is the environment part? Now, when it comes to happiness, I've got good and I've got bad news. It turns out, and this is research from about happiness and genetics, and we at the VU, we do a lot of studies. Actually, one of our specialties, one of our unique selling points in psychology, that we do a lot of research regarding genetic uptake of human beings and their behavior. And it turns out that there is something like the happy gene. Yeah, so people in their genetic uptake, some people are just happier than others, and it even looks like that around 50% of our happiness is genetic. Why is this good and bad news? Because if you're in the good side of the equation, it's most likely that you're happier just in whatever you do than people who are by nature a little bit less happy. Yeah, it is what it is. Then there is intentional activities. So the things that you do. So I just showed you the elements of flow. Those are things you could start doing tomorrow, looking for activities that increase your flow. So those are the things that we can really influence. And then there is just around 10%, which is circumstances. Now, this course is called is about HR in general, and specifically performance management and reward. We assume, and that's the million-dollar question, that money leads to happiness. And as you can see, the influence of money can only be limited. Why? Because it's just 10% of our happiness, what the circumstances in which we live. Yeah, so if you are by nature not a really happy person, you know, that Ferrari alone is not going to do the trick. Doing things that make you happy is definitely worthwhile, and there's the part that surrounds your circumstances, which is heavily related on money. Now let's focus on that 40%, the blue percentage. So what are the things that we should do? Well, in flow, there are a lot of activities described what you can do. Okay, but let us look at this red, about this 10%. Well, it's complex. Here, let me be frank about that. So if you see, well, it's only 10%, you think, okay, so the conclusion is money is not important. Well, not completely. Does money make you happy? $1 million question. Okay, if you look at the article of Kahneman, which is on your list for today, does money make you happy? Well, have a look at this graph. What you see here on the left hand side are people who are in the lowest ranks in income in the United States. And those are people who make around 10,000 US dollars a year. Yeah, so it's around 800, 900 a month, which is in the United States the lowest. And then you see the curve going up. It goes up and it goes up and it goes up. So people who make more money are happier. Happy in this case is defined as well-being. And why? Because well-being is the thing we, as I said, we do most. We feel all the time. So these were questions like, did you laugh today? Are you enjoying the day? Are you looking forward to tomorrow? Etc. So in terms of feeling, it turns out money makes you happy. However, you see that there is a point, a tipping point, and that's where it's around 75,000 US dollars, which equals 60,000 euro or so. More or less, give away inflation, give and take some a currency exchange. But the point here is that it is, let's say, between 60 and 70,000 euro. These are averages. So if you have a big household or a small household, or some people are more materialistic than others, it's all true, but in general you need there's quite some money where the tipping point is, and then after the tipping point, no extra money does not lead to extra happiness. So the difference between going from 10,000 US dollars a year to 15,000 euros a year, dollars a year, is significant. But from 75 to 80 is close to zero. Yeah, so in other words, let's put it this way, the difference between having a warm meal tonight, yes or no, is a huge difference. The difference between an iPhone 8 and an iPhone 10 is not that big. It's not that big. Yeah, so there is, and that's the conclusion when it comes to well-being. And I'm saying this, I'm stressing this well-being, because for evaluation of life, it's different. Answer to the question, according to Kahneman and Deaton, 2010, does money make you happy? Yes, money makes you happy up to a certain tipping point, and after that tipping point, extra money does not lead to extra happiness. Does this ring a bell? I hope it does, because basically what you see here is a step on a stairs or a step in the pyramid of Maslow. Now, I was the one saying to you that Maslow, the pyramid of Maslow, that I talked about it through when we were talking about motivation, because you should know it. It's very important in the history of psychology, but the idea of the pyramid of Maslow should be gone, because it's not a pyramid. However, it seems like the first layer of Maslow is indeed universal and is indeed part of a pyramid, because no one in the world can live without basic needs. Yeah, nobody in the world Everybody in the world should have their basic needs fulfilled. Good. Now, to make it a little bit more complex, let's have a look at the next graph. Now, what you see here is the graph of Kahneman and of Kahneman and Deaton, and you see three different kinds of positive and negative effects. So, where you're stress-free, where you have negative feelings, that you have positive effect, and what you see here is that poor people report lower levels of happiness. It goes up to a certain point, and then it tips. The other graph, however, in the middle is the ladder. Yeah, and that's the question, like, please rank yourself on a ladder and ask yourself whether or not you have positive feelings or positive thoughts, not feelings, thoughts about your lives. And it turns out that with more money, people think more positively about their lives. Again, caveat here is that we don't think about our lives all the time. And thinking about our lives is definitely different than feeling during our lives. But still, so the answer to the complete answer to the question of Deaton and Kahneman, so does money make you happy? First of all, it depends on what your measurement is of happiness. One, if it's well-being, it's a curve which goes up and then flatters, and which we call, by the way, curvilinear. Yeah, curvilinear means that it has a curve and then it becomes linear, as in a flat line, an asymptote. Yeah. So it flattens, but in the case of the of cognitive evaluation of life, it goes up with money. Good. In 1938, the grand study started at Harvard University in Boston, USA. And what they did in the grand study is they wanted to follow students throughout their lives. And they wanted to look, it was basically a medical study to see why certain people were getting certain illnesses and why other people were not. So why do you have a healthy and happy life? So they started with a group with around 250 students from Harvard. Most of them, of course, were very rich. Harvard in those days still is a very prestigious institute, and you have to pay a lot of money. So in order to compare the group, they also had a control group of boys living in a working class neighborhood in Boston. So you had rich kids and you had poor kids, all boys. And they started to follow them throughout their lives. And many of them, all of them had dreams, and some of them became famous doctors, some of them became famous politicians. One of them became president of the United States because John F. Kennedy was one of those students at Harvard. Some of them got severe illness, some of them developed alcoholism, depression, anxiety, schizophrenia. So almost everything you can imagine happened in that group. Now, before I give away the conclusions of the study, I have a question. Let's be a little bit philosophical here at the end of this lecture. You are most likely at the beginning of your career. Yeah, most of you are in the beginning of their 20s and or in their 20s somewhere, and you have a lot of years ahead of you. Now, think about your dreams. What is the biggest dream that you have in your life? The thing that you say, if I achieve that, that will make me happy. Can I ask you to meditate for a couple of seconds on the question what you want to achieve, hoping that it will make you happy? Welcome back. Now, it turns out in the GRAND study, they had a look at these boys, and they're still looking at them today. Many of them, of course, passed away because the study is already there for 90 years. But they also followed their spouses, so their wives. They also started to follow their kids. Yeah, so it's the biggest study in a medical study for the last ever. So it's huge. Now, the question is, there are a couple of conclusions which are very obvious, like smoking is not good for you. It turns out that alcohol has a very negative influence on happiness, or at least correlates, let me put it that way, correlates with unhappiness throughout their lives. And there are a lot of other things, and again, I would definitely recommend you to have a look at the GRAND study if you have time. But the interesting thing is the following: what was by far the best predictor of happiness throughout life? Yeah, so the single best predictor of happiness and also of medical well-being, not only mental but also physical. And the answer is warmth of relationship throughout life have the greatest positive impact on life satisfaction. Let me put it this way. What makes by far people happiest? Other people. And specifically people that you like or love. So the director who directed this study for 30 years brought the study back to one sentence and said warmth of relationship. And if this is still too long for you, what makes people mostly happy? It's love. Now, interestingly enough, you answered the question of your dreams in life. And most likely you want to be a psychologist or a composer, or you want to be rich, or you want to be famous, or you want... If I ask people, students, and unfortunately we're not face to face, but it is what it is. But the moment I ask my students or I ask young people, what is your dream? I hear a lot of things, but I never hear, I want to have a good relationship with other people. Many of us see it as secondary. Now, I don't want to be your priest, your rabbi, or your referent, or your whatever. You're not in church. But the thing is that research shows that happiness comes from other people. So what does this learn us about money? Well, first of all, and that's of course the part of this course. What does it help us to understand about the psychology of money? Money is important for our basic needs. Yeah, so that's the conclusion of today. We need money for our basic needs. Secondly, if we spend that money on other people, if we have enough of it, if we spend it on other people, we might feel happier. Yeah, so money is then an instrument to be connected with other people, and it's that connection that makes us happy. Thank you.